There is a kind of romance to it. There is a kind of family drama.
And when I found out, I was extremely happy.
The script for this one had been sitting around Hollywood since 2007. A director came on board in 2010, and then nothing happened because nobody would put up the money. So for over a decade, it was one of those horror projects that's always about to get made and never does. Then in 2023, it finally started shooting. You'd think that was the happy ending. It wasn't even the ending. They sat on the finished film for 3 more years, and then in February 2026, 20th Century released it in 1,100 theaters when a normal wide release plays in over 3,000. It opened to $1.6 million, and the reviews were terrible. The next weekend, Scream 7 came out and took every horror fan in the country with it, and Psycho Killer fell 80.6% down to 313,000. So a movie that spent 19 years getting to the screen was done about 10 days after it got there. Back in 1980, The Blue Lagoon made some real money, so a sequel made sense. In 1981, maybe 1982, while people still cared. Instead, somebody waited 11 years. Waiting that long between movies works when you're James Cameron making Aliens or Terminator 2. It did not work for this. It came out in August 1991 in over 1,200 theaters on a weekend when Hot Shots was the #1 movie in America. Return to the Blue Lagoon made $1.2 million. The reviews were awful on top of it, and the next weekend it dropped 80.8% down to 246,000. The whole domestic run ended at $2.3 million on an $11 million budget. That's about 20 cents back on every dollar Hollywood put in. The first Joker made $1 billion in 2019. So of course Warner made a sequel, and the tracking had it opening above $70 million. It actually opened to 37, and that was only the first piece of bad news. The people who showed up on opening night gave it a D on CinemaScore. That's the poll where opening audiences grade a movie. And no comic book movie had ever scored that low. Normally, you have to wait a week to find out how bad a second weekend is going to get. Not with this one. You could watch it collapse in real time. Every single day of that first week, the numbers dropped harder than the day before. And on weekend 2, it dropped 81.4% down to just $7 million. So here's a fun little stat to compare this to. Only 4 other movies in history ever fell more than 78% after opening above $25 million. That's Halloween Ends, Friday the 13th, The Marvels, and All Eyes on Me. Joker made it 5, and it's the biggest second weekend drop ever for a comic book movie. 2019 might have been the best year of Keanu Reeves' whole career. John Wick 3 came out in May and made $327 million worldwide. A month after that, he showed up in Toy Story 4 and stole the movie. After years of duds like 47 Ronin, the guy was officially back, and everybody was thrilled about it. But that exact same year, back in January, Keanu put out a movie called Replicas, and I'd bet money most of you have never heard of it. He played an inventor who lost his whole family and decided he was going to use robots to bring them back to life. That movie opened to $2.3 million. Weekend 2 should have been a lifeline. A long holiday weekend when everybody's off work and the theaters fill up. Everybody went to the movies that weekend, just not to this one. The word of mouth was so poisonous that Replicas dropped 81% to $439,000. It closed out its entire domestic run at $4 million. In August 2025, a thriller called Relay hit theaters starring Riz Ahmed and Lily James. Small independent movie, decent reviews, no scandal, nothing wrong with it. It just came out and nobody noticed. It opened to $1.9 million, and even that number was juiced. AMC runs these surprise screenings where you buy a ticket without knowing what movie you're getting. Relay was one of those, and all those tickets got counted into its opening Friday. So a chunk of its opening weekend audience had no idea they were going to see Relay until the movie started. And once the surprise tickets ran out, there was nothing underneath. It dropped 50% on day 2. Friday to Saturday of the same weekend, it lost half its audience. Weekend 2, it fell 81.7% down to $351,000. And you know what the distributor did about it? Bleecker Street looked at those numbers and simply stopped reporting them. The last total they ever announced was $3.2 million, and that was it. In 2003, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez were the most overexposed couple in America. People were so sick of Bennifer that this movie was getting trashed months before anybody had seen a single scene. Then people actually saw it, and it was worse than the jokes. Critics hated the title, the dialogue, and every single performance, except Christopher Walken, who was barely in it. This movie cost $54 million, had 2 of the biggest stars alive, and opened to $3.7 million. Then came the record. Second weekend, it dropped 81.9% down to $678,000. At the time, that was the biggest second weekend drop for any wide release in history. By all logic, that movie should have ended Ben Affleck's career. Somehow it didn't. But more than 20 years later, people still ask him about it in interviews. And I gotta hand it to him, he still answers. Because he knows he's never living that one down. This is the only one where a massive drop didn't cost anybody any money. Waitress started out as a small indie movie back in 2007 about a waitress who bakes pies. It did fine, everybody moved on, and then in 2016, it came back as a Broadway musical. That version turned into a real hit. It ran for years, it earned its money back a long time ago, and at some point they filmed it. In December 2023, Bleecker Street took that recording and booked it into over 1,200 movie theaters. And the opening was actually pretty solid, $2.8 million for a recording of a Broadway show. That's some real money. The problem was that every one of those tickets went to a fan of the musical, and that was the entire audience this thing had. They all showed up in the first 3 days. The second weekend, there was nobody left to sell to, and it fell 82%. But the show itself had been profitable for years, so whatever came in from movie theaters was just extra money on top. So nobody involved ever worried about it. Every movie hits problems during production. Jane Got a Gun hit all of them like a freaking bingo. This was a Western starring Natalie Portman, and first the director left. Then the cast turned into a revolving door. People signing on, people dropping out. They somehow got the movie finished anyway, and then the company that was supposed to release it went bankrupt. So the Weinstein Company picked up the rights. And you could tell exactly how much faith they had in this because they dumped it into theaters at the end of January 2016 with no promotion. It opened in 1,200 theaters and made $835,000. Weekend 2, it fell another 83.5%. And that's when the Weinsteins did something you almost never see. They yanked the movie out of more than 1,000 theaters at once. By week 3, a Natalie Portman Western was playing on 8 screens in the entire country. In 2024, there was a whole wave of these movies. R-rated action with lots of blood, everybody chasing the next Deadpool. This was one of them. Bill Skarsgård got absolutely shredded for it. And the gimmick was that his character couldn't speak, so they had Harry John Benjamin do the voice inside his head as a running voiceover. The distributor believed in it enough to book almost 2,000 theaters. It opened to $1.6 million. And whoever might have given it a chance in week 2 got a better offer because that's when The Fall Guy came out. Boy Kills World dropped 85% down to about $250,000 for the weekend. The entire domestic run ended at $2.6 million. And the biggest drop belongs to a movie most people have never heard of, even though the poster had 4 names everybody knows: Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, Ben Kingsley, and Anthony Hopkins. But the studio, Open Road, never seemed to know what to do with it. The movie was set for April 2016. Then it got pushed. Then it got pushed again. It finally landed in late February 2017, and with all that star power, it opened to just $1.5 million. Then came the second weekend, and Logan hit theaters. A monster R-rated action movie people had actually been waiting for. Anybody looking for that kind of ride had zero reason to pick Collide instead. So it fell 88.5%. That's the biggest second weekend drop ever recorded for any movie. Collide was still sitting in over 1,000 theaters, and it finished that weekend in 30th place. And 2 weeks into the release, Open Road just stopped reporting its box office numbers altogether.